forces that are causing you to have fear. It's all inside forces, you see.
Yeah.
Let's say that you care about someone, and here's a good example. Jerry and Esther were running through the woods one day, and Esther had a long black coat on, and when she jumped over a log, her coat covered it so Jerry couldn't see it. He was so close on her heels, and he banged his shin on a knot sticking out of the log and hurt himself badly, but he did not stop and look at it. Jerry will never look at something that is bleeding, ever. Especially if it's on him. And so Esther didn't know that he had been hurt until they got back to the house, and when he took his pants off, she saw the biggest bulging, bruising knot on his leg that it frightened her. And then she thought about his grandfather, who had, at about the same age that Jerry was then, slipped and fallen and bumped his hip on a storm cellar, got a blood clot, and died that night. So now Esther has managed to bring herself to her knees with fear. In other words, she's thinking thoughts that, whether they have anything to do with Jerry or not, she has found thoughts that are so the opposite of everything she wants relative to Jerry that she has completely disempowered herself. She could hardly find a breath. And then she thought, wait a minute. I did not know Jerry's grandfather, and I don't know what his state of being was, and I don't know how it was that was his time to go, but I know that Jerry dying of a blood clot today is not a vibrational match with what he's got going on, and the fear lifted off of her. In other words, it was self-imposed because of the thought she was choosing to think. Yeah. And that's the thing that we want you to understand, because reality will actualize around whatever thoughts you activate. And let's start in another place. When you give your attention to something, it's already vibrating. And when you hold your attention on it for as little as 17 seconds, you activate a same vibration within you. That's what we call an activation of vibration. If you keep it up, it becomes not just an activated vibration, but a chronically activated vibration. That's what a belief is. A belief is just a thought that you keep thinking. And these beliefs become easier and easier to think, because when you think them, things like them come around them for you to observe. So you think the thought, then it manifests, then you observe it, then you offer the vibration more. In other words, it isn't because it needs to be, but it will happen because of your attention to it. So when you realize that any thought that you think activates something within you, and that the emotions that you feel are your indicator of what has activated and how it blends or doesn't blend with who you really are. So thoughts like, I'm not enough, feel awful because they are so opposite of who you really are and what you really know. When you are finding a negative thought about another person, it feels awful because it's divergent from who you really are. So fearful thoughts are thoughts that are divergent from the reality of who you really are. That's all they mean, you see.
Yeah, I do see.
Jerry has a story that he tells about overcoming fear. And we say, that's like overcoming a hot stove. I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to overcome this. This is incredibly painful. But I'm going to overcome this. We think that when it's uncomfortable, that this should be your response. That too. In other words, we don't want you to endure discomfort. And so when you realize that negative emotion always means that you've got something active in you that isn't serving you, and then you just try to find a thought that feels a little better, now you're on your way to closing your gap. And when you do, you always feel fine.
What I see is I decided that I was to be fearful of the speed or the magnificence of being connected.
We don't think that's what it is. We don't think you decided to be fearful.
Okay.
We think that you found yourself feeling fearful when you weren't up to speed with who you are. In other words, you felt the fear because your untrained thoughts were going back to something so divergent from who you are. But now you know better.
Yeah.
In other words, we want you to understand that there isn't something for you to fear, but fear will come forward when you think thoughts that are opposite of what you've got going on. Here's another thing that's really important for you to hear, and we want this to soothe you a little bit. If life hadn't caused you to expand over here, not going wouldn't cause you to feel fear. In other words, if the larger part of you doesn't go, then you don't feel discord in not going. So the fear that you're feeling is really the fear, if you will. We don't like to put it in those terms, but since you keep doing it, we'll play your silly game for a moment. It's the fear of not keeping up to speed with who I am. That's it, period.
Yes.
When you feel fear, that's all it is. I'm not keeping up with who I am, period. And there's no good excuse for that.
Okay. That's all I have to say then.
Helpful.
Thank you. Yes, very much.
Stand if you think it's you. It is you. Wait. Yes. Wait. Yes. Sometimes we point over there and they come from over there. It's very strange.
Thank you. Thank you.
Co-creating at its best.
Thanks. I have 2 children. I have the intention of moving to America in February to be there with the man that I in my life. My children have chosen to remain in Australia with their dad, and though I desire them to come with me, I'm allowing them to be who they are without interfering with their decisions. However, sometimes my emotions switch from the excitement and anticipation of my desire to be in America to guilt and sadness leaving my children. So my question is...
Well, isn't that interesting? That your emotions would give you the appropriate feedback when you think bogus thoughts. In other words, do you think that you should be able to think wretched thoughts and that your inner being should just join you in those wretched thoughts so you would never feel any separation?
No.
That's really what would have to happen, isn't it? We're going to give you a really good solution first, and then we'll work back through it so that you can feel it fully. Mm-hmm. While there are many people with many opinions, we want to say to you to make a decision about what you're going to do and then line up with that decision. In other words, don't decide to go and feel guilty, or don't decide not to go and then feel like you've sacrificed. Just decide what you're going to do and line up with it, and the universe will yield a way for you to have everything that you want relative to all of it. In other words, when you think thoughts such as, my children will not thrive without me, that's a horrible thought, because your children have the facilities to thrive no matter what. Mm. When you think thoughts like, my children will feel that I've abandoned them, or my children will not do as well without me there every day, those thoughts are so contrary to what who you really are knows that, of course, they will separate you. Also, do you know that while it feels to you like you're having to make a choice here, I stay here with these or I go there with those, that actually what's happened through all this process of sorting it all out and sifting through the contrast, you've put the perfect unfolding into your vibrational reality, which includes you in all of their lives. And when you allow yourself to feel good by virtue of the thoughts that you are thinking, then you allow the universe to orchestrate the way to bring you everything that you want. Things that seem not possible right now open in ways that are possible. It falls into the same category of you can't find something that's lost. When you believe it's lost, you can't find it. When you believe the answer isn't there, you can't find it. So when you find some piece of this, and we can feel the power of your desire, and we can feel the power of your decision, And we can see that you're really not as controverted usually